Hello everyone, welcome to a new live stream. I'm on my own at the moment. We're hoping to get some guests that possibly may come on stream. But in the meantime, let's just run the countdown timer and we'll go on from there. Right, guys, welcome to Canon Lenses and Cameras. Thank you for coming. We are waiting for some guests to hopefully jump on. However, if you are watching and you would like to join the stream, please get in touch with me on the Facebook group. Do a direct message, private message me, and I'll send you the link that allow you to come on and chat live. And hopefully that'll be entertaining for you guys. Hopefully when someone jumps on. So just kick it all off. I'll just play the intro and you can watch that. Thank you. I'm in forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get. Right, that was the intro. We are still waiting for some guests to arrive, so I do apologize, it's just myself. So I thought I'd kick off going through some of the questions on the Facebook group, give you my take on it, and hopefully you guys will find this informative. So, Michael Davis, good morning. I'm considering switching to mirrorless, specifically the R6 and R6 Mark II. I currently have the 7D Mark II. Thoughts maybe from someone that made the jump for mirrorless. Huge learning curve. What are your recommendations? So, Michael, I don't think you're going to have a major problem learning a new camera system because essentially the Canon camera system is so intuitive. You can always learn from that, from your previous cameras. It's really easy to learn the mirrorless cameras, no major problem there. The benefit you got is better tracking, a lot quicker autofocus, and it's a dream for tracking wildlife. And I really think people will enjoy it, and I think it's a fantastic system to get into. So if you guys really want to get into photography and you want to use mirrorless cameras, don't be afraid of jumping from digital SLRs to mirrorless cameras such as the R6, the R5, the R7, which is APS-C. Obviously, the R6 and R5 are full frame, and obviously you have the R8 as well. So I don't think anyone's going to be too concerned, about joining. You're not going to be too concerned about going from digital SLRs to mirrorless. There's not much of a learning curve. The menus are pretty much what they were on the digital SLRs. And I think you're going to really love moving into the mirrorless system. The eye tracking is a game changer. It's fantastic for tracking wildlife, sports action. Canon's recently introduced extra tracking facilities for sports photography, such as helmet tracking in cars, that sort of thing. And I think people will be really surprised about what Canon is doing in the mirrorless system. So now I did want to touch on a new camera that's come out, which is the R8. Now I have criticized it on a previous video, I'll be honest, but let's go through the specs. We're talking 24 megapixels, sensitivity in low light, performance increased, up to 4K 60p video, full HD 180 frames per second you're getting for video work. 2.36 million EVF, You've got just one card slot. That's a UHS-2 SD card slot. Weather resistant construction. Obviously, not going to be to the same standard of the R6 and R5, obviously. Advanced HDR, HDRP, PQ modes, guided UI, 6.5 EV autofocus sensitivity, 40 frames per second, which obviously is a lot faster than the R6 and the R5. That's stuck at 20 frames per second in the digital sensor. However, to be honest with you, I don't think you really need 40 frames per second in general use. It's probably adequate, but 20 frames per second in my world, I don't think you need anything more than 10. As long as you get a camera that can do 10 frames per second, you're going to be happy. So when you start getting 20, 30, 40 frames per second, you don't really need that at all. In terms of focus breathing compensation, there is some software there to obviously help with that. You do have 30 frames per second raw burst mode. Basically what that's doing is taking some pictures before you press the shutter and after while you're pressing the shutter, just in case you miss some moments, Obviously H.264 and H.265 codecs for video. We've got a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, Bluetooth Low Energy 4.2, uses high quality webcam, obviously, but it's up to you if you want to use your camera as a webcam. Dual pixel CMOS autofocus Mark II. Essentially, those are the things that's actually on the new camera. The only thing you are losing, sorry, not losing. The main thing with this camera is it has no mechanical shutter with the R8. And it looks like we've got a guest joining us, so let me try and get him in. Hello, Alan. Can you hear me?
Hello, Paul.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself? Let's see if I can do this without being too tricky. Wait.
Right. Well, you see, everyone, we've got our regular contributor, Alan, and he's on the beach at present. Would you like to say whereabouts you are? Can you hear me? Sort of gone a bit quiet now.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Yeah. I am currently feet in the water here on South Padre Island, Texas, about a mile north of the National Birding Center here. And I'm going to quiet down a little bit. And as you can see, I am at every birding and wildlife photographer's paradise. Just within about 100 yards, I have a pelican, 2 egrets, and a crane that my golden retriever is currently chasing.
Whoa, nice.
And this is our current bay view, as you can see. So I'm out here with the good old 5D Mark II and a 70-200 f4, and just kicking it old school, and got some great shots. So just wanted to pop in and say hi. I'm not going to be able to contribute much today because I'm out here with my family in our truck with my son. So just wanted to come out and enjoy the view, get some good shots, and say cheers.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Then let's see, next week, maybe we can do another one where we can recap over this one and go over some, and maybe we can get some other people to join in too.
Yeah, I've been trying to get some new people coming on, but they're a bit shy, unfortunately.
Yeah, it happens. Not everybody's as photogenic as you, Paul.
I wish. Yeah, it's great to have you on at the very least, just to pop by and say hello,
Yes, and I am sorry that we couldn't come on and talk because, you know, as you know, there's a lot of big news happening, and so we've got stuff to talk about, and it would be great that we could do it all with our panel back. I'm definitely going to scold Dan about not being here. Dan, what are you doing? Huh? And let's see, we're missing Martin and good old Edward. So come on, guys, get on the ball. I'm here at the beach in the middle of nowhere, getting stuff done. Huh? What are you doing?
Good question. Good question. Where are they? Where is everybody?
Where is everybody?
They've disappeared. They don't want to come on.
I know.
You know, but what can you do? You can't force people to come on live, you know. But if anyone out there is watching, you know, you want to come on, you know, just send a message or something, you know.
Yeah.
What about you, Terrell Cockham in the actual comments? Would you like to come on and say hello?
All righty. Hey, guys, I'm going to have to say bye for now. Okay?
Okay. So I just want to say a big thank you.
No problem. Hey, Paul, you have a good one. And everybody else, stay safe out there. Keep shooting.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. And
all right. Till next time. We'll see you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there you have, obviously, Alan, a great guy, knows a lot about photography. And I just want to say a big thank you for Alan coming on. And yes, a big hello to Terrell Cochran. Thank you for leaving a message there. But, like, you know, if you do want to come on the stream and have a chat about photography, you know, feel free to let me know if you want to do that. I can always put, you know, a link up if anyone wants to join. Let me just see. Can we do that? Copy. So that's Terrell Cochran saying hello. Leave. I'm still trying to learn how to do these things with the software. So Terrell, let's see what he's just said. I can't right now. If you are about half an hour, I might be able to, but it would be on my cell phone. Fair enough. That's perfectly fine. Obviously, not everyone has the time to come on. Let me just recap what I was saying though with the R8. So it's 24 megapixels, up to 4K 60p video, full HD at 180 frames per second, 180p. 2.36 million EVF, UHS back to SD card slot, weather resistant, advanced HDR, guided UI. The one thing that it's got first curtain shutter. This is the problem with this camera, and I'll come out and say that with the R8. It's got first curtain shutter, but it's limited to 6 frames per second. And I think you're going to experience rolling shutter. Now, the first curtain shutter, apparently according to Canon specs, eliminates rolling shutter. However, if you use the electronic shutter, you know, above 6 frames per second, you're going to get rolling shutter. And there is no mechanical shutter on the R8. Now, I've done a video about that on the YouTube channel. And some people were being critical. And I'm thinking, why are you being a bit critical? Because it's not going to be fantastic at doing wildlife or doing fast panning shots, because you're going to get a lot of rolling shutter. And someone asked this question, what is rolling shutter? Basically, your sensor records the data from the top of the screen down to the bottom, right? Now, if your subject matter has moved really fast, you'll see some sort of distortion. And this is very obvious in straight lines, like with buildings. Now, instead of it being straight, dead on like that, it'll be slanted slightly like that. And that's what we call rolling shutter, where you're getting distortion in your image. So obviously, this is my problem with the R8. If it had a mechanical shutter, it sort of reduces that significantly. Don't get me wrong, you will get rolling shutter even with a mechanical shutter, but it's heavily reduced, and that's because it's recording data a lot quicker. So that's the main reason why I was quite critical of the R8. It will be interesting to see how bad the rolling shutter is on it. Yes, to be honest with you, I don't expect it to be any different to the rolling shutter on the R6 or the R6 Mark II. Apparently, the rolling shutter is slightly better on the R6 Mark II than it is on the R6. And I don't think it's going to be any different to the R6 Mark II in terms of rolling shutter performance. It's just disappointing that there is no mechanical shutter. Now, I've watched a lot of YouTubers review the R8 who've had access to it. And this is something key, really important, that is not mentioned. And it makes you wonder, why is it not mentioned in those video reviews or previews? Because obviously they've got a relationship with Canon. Canon's flown them out somewhere to test the camera, and they are not critical of the fact there's no mechanical shutter, and that beggars belief to me, because it's really important that you have a mechanical shutter, because 6 frames per second, and I'll be honest with you, I had the, let's see, I think it was a 600D, a Rebel digital SLR, and I think it could achieve 6 frames per second, but then it slowed down because the buffer was really tiny, and I was only getting about 3 frames per second after that. And I found the fact that those 6 frames per second that went down to 3 was really, really, really restricting me in wildlife photography. I just couldn't get the fast action that I wanted. I used to do aircraft photography as well, and those 3 frames, 6 frames is useless when a plane is traveling at like 90 miles an hour or faster. And I found that really, really limiting in terms of capturing images. So that's why I upgraded to the 7D, right? The original 7D, which was 8 frames per second. And soon after that, I upgraded to the 90D, which had 10 frames per second, mechanical shutter, obviously. And that's more than adequate. And I even sort of toyed with the idea of having the 1D Mark III, which only had 10 megapixels, which was quite a low resolution, really. But it could achieve like, I think it was 10 frames per second as well. And it could literally shoot forever, no buffer at all, really. So I really think that is something that is significantly great. So with the specs they had to cut costs in some place. Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, Terrell. They certainly would have to cut costs. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but to be honest with you, I would rather have a mechanical shutter and pay £2,000 instead of £1,500, rather than pay £1,500 and not have the mechanical shutter. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And if I'm honest with you, I've got it here. The R7 digital SLR mirrorless camera, it's the same price. Obviously, it's not full frame, but it has a mechanical shutter. It does 15 frames per second. Obviously, it has a 30 digital shutter on there, 30 frames per second, which is more than adequate. I think it's probably too much, to be honest with you. I don't think you need 20, 30, 40 frames per second. 10 will do the job, but 6 won't. I did have the 80D, and that did 7 frames per second, which was slightly less than my 7D, but it had a much better buffer, and that's another thing you need, a decent buffer. The R7 does have a limiting buffer in it as well, so it can be quite restrictive. So what Gerald have said, that's what I am finding. 3 frames a sec with small buffer is hard to shoot wildlife and air shots. That's what I'm saying. This is why I've been critical of the R8, because it has a first curtain shutter. You see, when you have a mechanical shutter, it's doing this. There's two blades basically doing that. you know. First curtain shutter, the sensor on the camera turns on, and then you've got a shutter that does that. And that's what first curtain shutter is, more or less, just one shutter. And that takes your image. However, 6 frames per second ain't going to cut it. You know, and I'm really not sure I believe what Canon is saying when it says it completely eliminates rolling shutter. I can't see that happening. If a mechanical shutter doesn't eliminate it completely, how can a first curtain shutter eliminate it completely? It can't. It don't make sense. So I'll just go through some of the questions actually we've got on the Facebook group if I can find some. You know, people do ask questions on the Facebook group, and I do try and answer them. But it depends if I can find them, really, because there's many images on the actual Facebook group. So just bear with me while I try and find something. So, can anyone recommend a tripod for the Canon EOS R10? I really need one, but I'm going on a day shoot and need and would be useful to have one on occasion, especially summer, macro photography in particular. Yeah. I would recommend the Manfrotto ones. They're really good. The Gitzo ones are very good as well. They're carbon fiber. There are many other brands as well, and some cheap ones as well. But personally, you want to go with a brand that's well known. And the Manfrotto ones and the Gitzo ones are outstanding quality. They will last you a lifetime. Don't get me wrong, they are not cheap. You're probably talking between £200 and £300 for a decent one. For one of the heavy duty ones, you can be talking up to about £500. And for the ones with the fluid video heads, probably talking around the £1,000 mark. But they last you a lifetime. A good tripod should last you the rest of your life. Just think about it like that. So get a tripod that is high quality and is not a cheapo. Trust me, you will be so disappointed if you get a cheap tripod. It will be so rubbish. You'll be so disappointed with using it. You'll just throw it in the bin and you'll end up buying a more expensive one. So do yourself a favor. Don't buy a cheap tripod. Buy an expensive one. So Terrell says, 40 probably come in handy at like shooting basketball. Want the seconds that the bat hits the ball. Oh, sorry. I think it means the moment it hits the bat, the moment the ball hits the bat. Sorry about that. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Fast action, we're the fastest frames per second you can get is great for fast action. The problem is, and I think this is really understated, Terrell, do you have the time to edit all those images? That's the problem, because you can be talking about hundreds and hundreds of the same image. Pretty much, you are literally going to be taking. And to be honest with you, no one had a problem with 10 frames per second. Whether it be the 1DX Mark 2s and 3s, whether it be the 90Ds, 80Ds, 70s Mark II, they were fine, and they had about 10 frames per second on average. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary to have so many frames per second. Clearly, it's always nice to have more. It's like having a car, isn't it? Who wants a car that can only do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds when you can get something that can do it in 2 seconds? That's people are always wanting something that's faster, better specs, faster and greater. But another example would be, let's say in the UK we have a speed limit on motorways of 70 miles per hour. Now, if you're in a Ford, how fast can you legally go? 70 miles an hour. If you're in a Ferrari, that can do 250 miles an hour, something like that, in one of the top cars. How fast can you go? 70 miles an hour, because it's the legal limit. So just think about it like that. So do you need something that can do 40 frames per second, or would 10 or 20 suffice? Because a lot of people look at the R6 and the R6 Mark II. And obviously the R6 Mark II can do 40 frames per second. The R6 can do 20. Ask yourself, do I need 40? Do I really need it? Or can I get by? Is 20 enough? I think 20 is more than enough. But that, remember, this is digital shutter, right? It's not mechanical shutter. The mechanical shutter on the R6 and the R6 Mark II is the same speed, 12 frames per second. So if you're going to be using mechanical shutter all the time because you don't want that rolling shutter issue, doesn't matter which one you get really, because they both do the same. Obviously, you're getting a bump in megapixels on the R6 Mark II, which is 4 megapixels. That's it, 4 megapixels. Like, let me show you something. This is what I was hoping would be the R8, which would be an update to this camera. This camera is the EOS R, 30 megapixels. Now, I was expecting the R8 to have 30 megapixels. That would make sense to go from the EOS R to the R8. They were similarly priced. Basically, when I got this, I think it was around £1,700. It's £1,500 for the R8. And I thought, whoa, if that comes out and it does have, well, I assumed it would have a mechanical shutter, but it doesn't, you know. So it was a little bit disappointing to find out that it doesn't have a mechanical shutter. So we were waiting for the R50 as well, or it may be renamed as the R100, which is going to be the Rebel equivalent. So, you know, basically we'll be looking at having a Rebel camera, hopefully soon, probably in the later part of this year. And I think that will pretty much be comparable to the R8, if I'm honest with you. It may not have a viewfinder though, just like the there was I can't remember the name of it, but there was something equivalent to the it was a digital form of the 90D. I can't remember the actual camera, sorry, but it needed an attachment for the viewfinder, and you had to pay an extra, I think it was an extra £200 for that. And I suspect the R50 will not have a optical viewfinder or EVF. You have to buy that separately and put that on the top if you want one. And I suspect Canon will sell that as an extra, which is more than great and fantastic for everyone to get. You know, it always depends on what you can afford, what do you want to buy. And, you know, I really hope that a lot of people have access to the Rebel cameras when they come out, because I'll be honest with you, these cameras, let me get the R6 Mark II, cost me £2,500 for that. The R7, £1,500. When I bought the EOS R here, that cost £1,700. Photography, getting quality products is expensive, you know, and it can be a very expensive hobby, you know, in terms of getting stuff, you know. Then you've got lenses, you know, if I just show you this lens, which is the Canon 100 to 500 RF lens. To go to a retail outlet in the UK, it'll set you back about £2,900. You can get it grey import for about £2,500. Photography is a very expensive hobby, and if you're not into it, you know, if you're not into wildlife, you're not into sports photography, and you buy stuff like this, it's like a paperweight if you're not into it. So just remember that before you think about buying equipment, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to achieve? Are you going to make money from it? Is it just a hobby? Are you prepared to pay the big bucks to get the greatest and latest? It's up to you to decide that. But it can be a challenge, you know, to really look for the right camera that suits your needs. So someone else has commented, David, guys, how often can do the discounts in lenses? On average, I'd say twice a year, generally on the Black Fridays and at Christmas time, they tend to do their deals. But keep in mind these deals can take a while for you to get your cash back, because you know you get cashback deals basically, and you have to submit your details, and it can take about, I don't know, about 3 months sometimes to get your money back. And I just wish Canon just knocked it off the price of the gear you want to buy, rather than make you spend extra and then get reimbursed. It can be quite annoying, that, you know. But let's see if we can find any more questions on the Facebook group. There's a lot of pictures. Again, if you'd like to go on the Canon Facebook group, go to Canon Lenses and Cameras. It's a Facebook group I set up for everyone to benefit from, people to learn about equipment. And you know, I do this to try and, you know, promote photography, and I do appreciate everyone that comes onto the Facebook group who wants to talk about photography. You know, it's one of those things that, you know, not everyone is into it. You know, not everyone wants to spend the huge amount of money that photography can cost. You know, if I have to look at all these camera equipment I've got, I've probably got about 10 grand in photography equipment. So let's see what Terrell said. They just left another comment. Look at the R50. I think it is the Rebel replacement, and it does have an EVF. I hope it does. You know, it'd be nice if it does have one. And I think it's going to be affordable. It's going to be around the 600 to 700 price mark. And to be honest, that's what the digital SLRs were around roughly. You know, I can remember one of my first SLRs cost me about £450, £500, something like that. And I think that is a reasonable price for the average day person to spend, you know. But then when you're talking about the R6, like I've got here, £2,500. The R5 is about, I think it's about £3,600. That's a lot of money for someone to spend, especially if you're not into photography, you know. And I would say being a photographer is an expensive hobby, you know. And think about it. Sometimes, can you apply that money to go on trips? And this is something I want to point out, right? A lot of people talk about gear, talk about equipment, talk about having this, having that. You know, can I buy this lens? Should I buy that camera? Should I spend £1,000 on that camera or lens? Do you need to spend that much money? Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't want to spend £2,500 on this RF 100 to 500, which is relatively only slightly better in some respects to the 100 to 400 Mark II EF lens. And would you like to apply that money to going on a trip? So think about it. You can buy all this gear, yeah, but are you going to go anywhere with it? Because you've just spent all your money on these lenses. Or would you be interested in, you know, going off on a trip to South Africa and going to one of the parks, taking pictures of wildlife? But then again, you could always rent the equipment. You know, you don't have to buy an EF 500 f4 lens costing what, about £4,000, £5,000, you know. Or you could go on holiday with that money, rent one of these lenses for a couple of weeks. That might set you back between £500 and £1,000, but then you've got your holiday, you know, and then you're getting your images. And sometimes I think a lot of people get so bamboozled by gear. Oh, I've got to buy the latest. I've got to have the greatest, you know. Let me show you another lens, which is the RF 800. Only set you back about £1,000, $1,000, whatever. Is it weather sealed? Is it super sharp? Is the f11 aperture a bit dark? Yeah. But it will achieve what you want to do. Basically, it gives you long reach, 800 millimeters, and you'll love it. I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk on my own here because it's a bit boring when you're on your own, isn't it? It's always better to have someone to, you know, work off. So I'm just trying my best, and I hope I'm not being too boring today. So there's a lot of images on the Facebook group. I wish I wish people would, when they post pictures, would have something to say about their image rather than just post an image, because I don't like Facebook groups to be just like holding galleries for images. You know, just try and say a bit more about the image, why you took it, what made you take this image, why do you like this image so much, and also try and put the the details of the photograph you've taken, such as shutter speed, aperture, location, would be really nice. I think people like to know where this image was taken, because they may want to go there and take some similar images, you know. So let's have a look. So Tattoo Manovani, I'll tell you what, these names can be really difficult to pronounce sometimes. Hello guys, good evening, and thank you very much for having me at the group. I'm looking for advice in order to repair a Canon 24-70 2.8 Mark I in amazing condition. Unfortunately, I learned recently that those lenses are no longer repairable. I think that's what the thing is. The older lenses are not really going to be serviced by Canon. There are independents out there that will do it. There are actually some specialty companies out there that will take your battered lens, they'll take the elements out, clean them, they'll repaint the lens, basically recondition the entire thing, but they're not cheap. They will charge you quite a bit of money to do that. However, it may be worth it. It depends how much you really want that lens. And don't get me wrong, the newer lenses cost more money, and they cost a lot more money, and that's why, you know, put it in context. I was looking at getting the 300 Mark I 2.8 weather sealed L lens, and I think I was looking at around a £2,000 price mark. But then I had a look around on eBay and I found a 300 2.8 Mark II lens just for £1,000 more. Typically, you'll spend about £3,500 with the case. Mine didn't come with the case, so it was a bit cheaper. But you need to think about, you know, camera gear and that sort of thing. See if we've got any more questions on the Facebook group. Right. Kevin McNally. Hi, I'm a newbie to amateur photography. I'm looking for advice on buying a good flash for my camera. I've got a 5D Mark III, but no flash to attach to it. You know, my suggestion is go on eBay. There's a lot of those Canon speed lights that you can get at a relatively decent price. Obviously, there's third-party off brands. Yonguno, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that word properly. They do a selection as well, relatively cheap. Yeah, the 5D Mark III is a good camera. You know, fantastic. You don't have to get a mirrorless camera. I think that's something a lot of people talk about and want and think about. I want to get a mirrorless camera. You don't have to, you know. If you can get a cheaper digital SLR, like a 5D Mark IV, 5D Mark III, 5D, even a 5D Mark II, for a relatively low price, you're not going to put yourself heavily in debt. And I'll tell you something. It took me a whole year to pay off the R6 that I've got here. £2,500. Just to let you know how I paid for it. Actually, it was on Amazon, and sometimes they do a 12-month payment plan where you can buy it and pay it off monthly, and then at the end of the year you've paid it off. But it's slightly different where you actually get the camera first, you know. And I've done that with quite a few lenses, you know, quite some cheaper lenses. I think I did that with this lens. This is the 24-105 EF lens. Yeah, EF lens. I did that and I paid for that monthly as well. There are other options to pay for camera equipment and such. I don't know if you're familiar with PayPal Credit. They give you an option to pay over a 4-month period, interest-free, if it's over £100. That's another option. If you've got a good credit rating, you'll be able to get PayPal Credit. I've done that on quite a few things, really, and paid it off as quickly as possible, but it gives you the option of spreading the cost. So if you find something on eBay that is too good to resist and say it's a fantastic price, fantastic quality, I want to buy it. What can I do to get hold of it? That's another option rather than pour it on your credit card. I'm not trying to put people in debt in this stream in terms of what to buy, but I think it's important to realize that other options that you can use to purchase equipment if you really want to buy equipment. So let's see if we find any more questions. A lot of people seem to post camera equipment like, look what I've got, and it's boasting on the Facebook group. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but if you're going to do something like that, explain what each lens will do and what it's for and how you will use it. I don't like to see people boasting about what gear I've got, because that's like saying, look what I've got, look what I can afford, and look what you can't buy. And I just wish people would be a bit more constructive. If you're going to show all your camera equipment in a picture, at least talk about each lens, what it does and how it's beneficial, and that will help other people understand what that equipment is for. Hopefully I'm not being too critical there. So I'm just trying to find a question for you, but there are so many images. So I'm curious, when buying a camera, whether it be mirrorless or not, how much importance does the still camera function matter in your decision? I think what he's saying is, are you buying a camera for video or stills? And I think we're really blessed at the fact that these cameras can do both pretty much equally. The only problem is rolling short. You do get that in the video because, like I've said before, the sensor reads from top to bottom. Someone actually posted a really interesting image actually that showed how this worked. So basically here, the bird had its wings open like this. And then as the sensor scanned the image, there was some water down here, a reflection of the bird. And when you saw the bird in the bottom part of, the photograph, the bottom part of the screen here, you saw the wings were closed. And that's a good example of how rolling shutter works. So because it's scanning from the top, running down to the bottom, you can potentially have a problem like that. Now, when global shutters come into existence on these cameras, which means instead of you getting a scan going like that, it takes a picture of the entire screen, bang, like that. And you won't get rolling shutter, but I think we're a way off before the global shutters come out. It's rumored that the R1, when that comes out, incidentally, you might want to be a bit disappointed by the news I have for you. It's likely to be pushed back to 2024. So we've been waiting a good long while for the rumored R1 to come out, which is probably going to disappoint a lot of people. So, it's disappointing. I know Dan Schubert is really keen to get the R1 when it comes out. He's tempted to buy the R3. But price-wise, you're probably talking between £8,000 and £9,000 for the R1. And the R6 is around the £6,000 mark. You might be able to get some deals, obviously. But let's see if we find any more questions. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's been really pleasant on the Facebook group. It's really nice to know there's lots of people that enjoy photography and want to converse with people. Occasionally you get someone on who thinks he knows it all, and you probably know who you are. I don't like to have people in the Facebook group berating people in terms of their knowledge. Just because you're a professional doesn't make you any better than an amateur. Just remember that we're all human beings and we should have some good relationships with each other. So it looks like we have a new guest. Marshall has come, so I'll add him to the stream.
Paul, how are you?
Hello, Marshall. How is it going?
Lovely. Sorry, I'm a little late.
No, it's okay. Alan came on briefly, but he's on a beach where a lot of wildlife using his 70-200, which is a bit short for wildlife, if I'm honest, Alan. But yeah, he's out with family on a beach and taking pictures of various seagoing wildlife with his golden retriever dog, probably running after it, ruining his pictures.
I have a proper British dog.
Yeah? What do you have then?
Let's see if I can get him up here. Come here. Come here, buddy. A Welsh Corgi.
Oh, that lovely dog.
Hopefully he likes being up here. Let's see. Very well behaved dog.
Yeah. Well, I used to have a dog, but she passed away, unfortunately. And I'll tell you a bit of a sad story. I had 2 Siberian Husky dogs. Yeah, they were very nice. Unfortunately, they escaped from my parents' house, and a farmer decided to shoot them.
Oh man,
I know.
that's
what I never could understand is how could you shoot both? You know, surely one would, not be injured. But
they're not wolves. That's just ridiculous.
I know, not nice, is it? What's your thoughts, Marshall, on the R8? What do you think about it?
I think it's great. I really do. Usually when Canon has like a less expensive full frame, like when they did the 6D, it was a slow camera, right? It was lower resolution. It was also, like low frame rate and slow focus and very few focus points. But that camera can focus fast and it's got a high frame rate. So, I mean, they took off the IBIS, but I'm never like a huge fan of that anyway. I wouldn't pay $1,000 for IBIS. So
If I'm honest,
a lot of camera for that much money.
Well, if I'm honest with you, I've got the EOS R. This doesn't have IBIS, but the IBIS in the camera, in the lenses, sorry, the IS, that is, the lenses, it seems to work fine. And to be honest, I've got the R6, and I don't really notice that much of a difference between the EOS R has no IBIS and the R6 it does. You might notice it a little bit in video, but when it comes to stills, I don't think it's a big deal,
No, I mean, I've heard there are people that can use IBIS to shoot at like a quarter of a second and an eighth of a second, but I don't usually do that.
It's a bit pointless, really, if you're out in the field, because you want fast
shots. It's not moving. I'll use a tripod or I'll find a rock or something. Anyway, I'd rather get really. Yeah. That's me. So it seems like, I mean, it seems outstanding, I think. And, I mean, the way where they cut corners was really on things that don't matter that much. Like it doesn't have a fully mechanical shutter, but I think it's proven now you don't need a fully mechanical shutter, right? Just the electronic first curtain is, probably better. So I think, at that price point for those people, it'll be great.
I have been a little bit critical on the R8, if I'm honest with you, because I put out a video about it. I get what you're saying regarding the first curtain, right? But it's limited to 6 frames per second with no rolling shutter. Well, it claims it eliminates rolling shutter. And I think that's a big deal, because with no mechanical shutter, which sort of reduces rolling shutter quite significantly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you don't get any. You do get some in mechanical shutter, because it's a lot, but it's obviously a lot quicker than the digital one in terms of not getting rolling shutter. But 6 frames per second doesn't seem good enough for fast action wildlife to me.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe
if wildlife is, but wildlife is a specialty. And maybe for people who are really serious about wildlife, I think the R7 is really an excellent choice, because you can only get so much reach out of an L lens until you need to spend a lot of money, and the R7, I think, in the crop mode, it gives you more density than even the R5. So
Yes, it does.
a lot of those you probably know better than me, but I think a lot of those photographers like the R7 for that.
Well, the R5 in crop mode gives you an effective megapixels of 17 megapixels, where the R7 gets you 32, doesn't it?
Way better.
Yeah, so it's a lot more. The only difference is, low light capabilities. That's obviously slightly better with the full frame cameras. You're always going to get that no matter what. I think if you're looking at wildlife, the R7 is probably the better camera, because you're going to have your 15 frames per second mechanical, 30 frames electronic. Where the R8, obviously you're limited if you're going to do wildlife to that 6 frames per second, because I do not think the electronic shutter is really good enough for fast action, because you're gonna get rolling shutter coming into your images, and a lot of people underestimate rolling shutter, and some people think it's not a big deal, and other people are really critical. It depends on your point of view, I suppose, if you can live with it or not. A good example would be if someone's swinging a bat, you're going to see it then. If someone's, got a tennis racket, you're going to see it like that. But in other scenarios, it might not be very obvious. Or if the bird is static and not moving, you're not going to see it. But there are instances where you'll see it, because I know we had a guest on who did, gymnasts, and he absolutely hated. I can't remember his name. Was it Mark? He was on a previous stream. I think you were on at that time, and he does indoor photography as well. And he just has to use mechanical shutter because the rolling shutter was just horrible to him to use.
Yeah, I mean, for my work, I'm a lot more worried about like strobing effects with artificial lights, right? With the electronic, and I mean, I've seen all kinds of terrible artifacts using electronic shutter indoor, like these rainbow-looking moire patterns. Stuff you can't possibly fix. So, if you're an event photographer or doing weddings, and that's exactly where you'd want it, right? I'm indoor during the ceremony. Silent shutter seems great, and then you look at on the little screen, it looks fine, and then when you look at the 8x10s, everything's like completely destroyed because of the way the lighting flickered indoors or something. So yeah, I don't know what electronic shutter is really for on these cameras, except to brag that you can do it.
Well, I talked about that previously. It's like the difference of having a Ford and a Ferrari, isn't it? Like I want a Ferrari because it goes a lot faster, but you can only travel at 70 miles an hour on the motorway. So is there any point to that Ferrari then?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess in Nina Bailey's book, she said, well, the two biggest cases for electronic shutter and this high frame rate is you're indoors and you want it to be silent, or you're capturing something moving fast. And those are the two cases where electronic shutter, on these cameras anyway, is not effective. So I guess I could buy an R3, but I guess in 3 or 5 years, that problem will be solved in cameras at this range, right? And whatever the R6 III and the R5 III or whatever, maybe the R5 II even, right? They'll solve that sensor readout problem. Then we probably won't have mechanical shutters at all, I bet.
Well, I think when we get to global shutters, that will change completely.
Yeah.
Because instead of going from here to here, you're going bang, and it's done. And I think obviously that's where the difference will be. But it won't change the art of photography, essentially. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that'll change the art. I think what changes the art is, all this AI processing. But, as photographers, I guess the technology is constantly changing and you have to change with it. That's all. I mean, we went from darkroom photography used to be a huge skill set, right? And all those skills are gone, and you just have to adapt. and or don't, but so but this idea that, like, I don't know, the software takes the picture and the software makes the photo and everything. I in some ways, I don't know, it'll make it kind of better for the artists, because I think the AI photos will just all kind of have the same look. They'll get the same sort of color, and the oversaturated greens and reds, and it'll have a certain look, and then we'll just figure out how to have photos that don't have that look.
Yeah. Because I was quite disappointed when I looked at the R8 and it wasn't 30 megapixels, and I was really expecting that to happen. Because if it's a successor to the EOS R, why isn't it 30 megapixels? Why is it 24 again?
Because the R6 is $1,000 more. I'm sure that's why, right? I mean, you don't. I can't imagine positioning a camera for $1,000 less with higher resolution. That's what I think, but
But you are missing an IBIS and obviously a mechanical shutter. So to me, the next step would have been 30 megapixels. And a lot of people are disappointed when even with just the R6, when that came out at 20. And it does make people think, 20, but the EOS R was 30. That doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be a superior camera, the newer model, and it's like only 20. And then you're thinking, well, the R5, it's 45, that is. But then it's an extra, like, what, £1,500 more?
It's very, yeah. I mean, that's what I bought, but right, because for that reason mostly. And they said, I guess the viewfinder image was better. So yeah, I spent all the extra money, but I mean, everybody, at least in DP review, there's a lot of people that own the R6 and R5s, and they all like them. That's what I've seen. Nobody seems to really dislike those cameras very much, except sometimes the focus is a little. There's some things about the focus system that are a little.
Yeah.
Like if it's not doing eye detection, it's not exactly the same as what we had before.
Yeah.
I guess since it uses that dual pixel, it can identify like vertical lines, but not horizontal. So from what I understand, Canon's working on that, so they have like cross point like before, right? So if you're trying to track like someone wearing a helmet, right, and you only can look at the vertical, it will only focus on something vertical, and you have to tilt the camera a little or something. I haven't had that problem, but in some ways it's not always exactly the same, because it's, I don't know, because it's thinking. Actually, I think it's thinking harder. It thinks differently than the old cameras do, than the DSLRs.
Yeah.
It's used to.
I was watching a video actually, and someone said to eliminate rolling shutter, just do that. And apparently that eliminates your rolling shutter because your sensor's going that way instead of that way.
Really?
Yeah, but obviously you've got less real estate in the screen when you do that, But it might be an interesting thing for our viewers to try that out, see if it works. I'm skeptical, but
well, I guess it depends on the direction of the motion that you're fighting.
Yeah, but then it would depend if someone's flying that way a lot quicker. You might still get it.
When things moving this way, then you put the camera sideways and the shutter moves that way with it. I guess so. If it's moving up and down, then like a propeller, like that's the classic case. But propellers going in every direction, so I don't think it would help.
Someone's commented on one of the questions. 5D Mark IV, what is a good all-around walk-around lens? Depends what you think is a good walkabout. To be honest, I've always thought the 24 to 105s were good.
Yeah, or 24 to 70 f4. So, like I have just a second. don't know if this fellow's here. So this is with the 2470 f2.8, and this is an R5, and this lens really dwarfs the camera.
Yeah,
There's the adapter here, but the f2.8 is quite heavy. F4s are a lot lighter, and you still get the L quality. It depends what you want. I mean, I bought that for indoor photography, and F4 gets a little slow, but so I would say if you're thinking walking about and you're mostly outdoors, or you don't mind about, you don't need like super thin depth of field, 2470 to f4 or the 24105 is great, and that f4 is a constant f4, so at 70 millimeters it's still f4, so I like that lens. And then there's a lot of primes if you want something fast. Like I really like the 85 millimeter, or is it 85 millimeter 1.8? I have that over here. So I bought, this is a much smaller lens, and it's fast and very thin depth of field at f1.8. What's it, 80? It's an EF, but I guess now there's an R that's 85 and f2, and it's smaller. But this lens, I think I paid $350 for it. Maybe it's a little more now. I love this lens.
I think a lot of people do they get bamboozled by the RF and they think, oh, I've got to get the RF version rather than stick with the EF version. Are they going to see a huge amount of difference in the RF version when they've got the EF version?
Well, the 70 to 200 f2.8 is a big improvement, at least in size, but I'm not going to sell any lenses to because they work. That was, I guess without that adapter, there's no way I would have bought the mirrorless, because my lens collection is roughly $10,000 US, roughly, and I'm not, so it's one thing to spend a few thousand, you sell your old camera and you get a new one, and you've spent like a couple thousand to get it, but to then flip all the lenses and lose all that money, no way, especially how much they were charging. So at least in my case, I already had them. You probably did too, right?
Well, to buy this, I had to sell 3 lenses, basically.
Yikes.
That's the 150 to 600 Sigma lens, which doesn't perform well on RF at the moment. The 100 to 400 Mark II, and the 600 RF lens, which I never used. So I got rid of all those 3 and put it into this RF 100 to 500. Because I always thought you can have all these lenses, but you can only use one at a time, or you got 2 bodies, you take 2 with you. So just get one that does it all. It's probably a better idea. It's just investing all that in it. It's a bit of a kick in the teeth sometimes, because you're always going to lose some money when you sell something, aren't you?
Oh yeah, but I just think that's different, right? But I think for the most part, if you have an adequate lens that meets your needs, I wouldn't, like this one, I wouldn't sell this 85 f1.8 to get an RF 85 f2.0. Like, that would be silly, I think. I'd rather get some other lens, maybe, I don't know what. But.
Well, I think I was talking about Martin Sector earlier on about the gymnasts. He's just recently acquired a new lens, which is an interesting one. Nevertheless, it's not something I'd want to buy myself. A 200 1.8L from 1995.
That's a big lens, I think.
Apparently he got one in almost mint condition. But you're talking about a lens that's like, what, nearly 25 years old.
Well, I don't know if optics changed that much, right? But that's a big giant lens, but for indoor gymnastics, right? Yeah. It's probably exceptional.
It will be, because if you're using a 70-200 at 2.8, so you're getting a better aperture.
Yeah, more than a stop. And really, so and especially like in a high school gym, whatever's behind the gymnast is like crap, right? Yeah. So throwing it out of focus is going to make a much better shot, where the athlete pops out instead of, looking at some handmade sign or, somebody chewing gum or something behind them. So yeah, it sounds like, because that's why, like I had the 70 to 200 f2.8, and that's the benefit is when, you're shooting if you're shooting a concert from a pit and you're farther away from the performers, then the 85 works. Then 70 at f2.8, or I'm sorry, 200 millimeters 2.8 gives you a nice soft background focus, and he gets even more of that. So, and yeah, I would love to have one.
Well, I left a comment on his post. Not sure I see the point. No IS. Better make sure the shutter speed is high.
What's that?
Not sure I see the point. No IS. Better make sure shutter speed is high.
Well, you're shooting gymnasts, right? I mean, if you're indoor shooting gymnasts, you want the high shutter speed, and you're going to have probably fair lighting, so so that extra stop of better ISO is worth it. Yeah. Or if you're really well heeled, you have a body that has image stabilization, I guess. But I can handhold a 200 millimeter lens is fine. Right. I'm not a big fan of image stabilization.
I think you can hold it for a while, but believe me, holding a heavy lens like that after a few hours.
Oh yeah, that was a big lens, isn't it? That's
like feel that. Don't matter if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're gonna feel that. It's like trying to hold the 500 f4.
Yeah, I mean, I have. Let's see. So for baseball, I have this monopod. So in the U.S., the Major League Sports will let you bring in any camera equipment you want, but no tripods, because if somebody's trying to walk past you, you have a tripod in your seat, they can't get out. But monopods are okay, and a monopod with this little, I don't know, with this thing, that's okay too. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a heavy duty Manfrotto one. Basically, you unscrew the bottom, and there's 3 legs inside, and you put them out. But it's actually heavy duty, but it only collapses into 2 sections. But it is absolutely a beast to carry on. It's not like those collapsible ones that you've got there that are a bit more flimsier. I'm not saying they're totally flimsy, but they're a little bit flimsier in comparison to the one I've got.
Wow.
But
it's pretty thick.
It's a lot longer to carry, though. It's like carrying a walking stick rather than something you can shove in your car boot quite easily.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't have a 10-pound lens like that. I guess that's what that 200 millimeter 1.8 must be. But I'd like to have it. I'd like to have that problem. I would enjoy that problem.
Yeah, I would enjoy carrying around the RF 600 f4, but I'm not prepared to spend 13 grand on it.
You could fly to New York to buy that lens and just fly home with the money you save.
Really?
Probably. I don't know what it costs in the US, but.
Well, did you ever see that photo from B&H where they had a 1200 mm EF 5.6 lens, and it was like a bazooka, and it had to be on a tripod because there's no way you'd be carrying that thing around. And I think it went for 100 grand, something like that. And it was an absolute beast. I think you can do a search on Google and see a photo.
I think I did see it was huge, right? Yeah. And it was like $25,000 or some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah,
I thought right. In the US, a 600 f4 RF is $13,000 US. So I don't know what the pound is trading at now, but convert. I want to find out. Can't type.
Yeah, the pound has pretty much tanked compared to the dollar recently, mainly because of our failed politicians. That we keep changing our prime minister every couple of months,
Well, it's still worth more than the dollar, though.
Yeah, still.
8,000 pounds buys $10,000.
I remember when this was many years ago. Obviously, when I went to America on a holiday, it was basically £1 would get me $2. Yeah, not anymore. I think those days are long and gone.
Well, it'll bring more tourists to Britain, so there's always that.
Yeah,
Always a good side to everything, somehow.
Mm.
So yeah, come visit us in New York and get your lens. And
so you live in New York then?
what's that?
Live in New York then?
No. You just fly to New York and go to B&H, buy the lens, and fly back to Heathrow.
Right.
It's cheaper than you said. It's how much? You said that lens is 13,000 pounds.
Yep, literally. But Canon has a habit of charging the UK market more than other places. I don't know if you're aware of different markets and how Canon it works with its regional pricing. It sets certain prices, but when it comes to grey imports that are from normally Hong Kong, you can save a huge amount of money, you know, like I did, I suppose. Even though I had virtually an impossible task to get the R7 in the UK, I think it's set at 1,500 and I got it for 1,200 on the grey import market. And that included postage costs as well.
When you're ready, we'll pick you up maybe at Boston Airport, and we'll drive to New Hampshire where they have no sales tax and find your lens. It'll save you 6% more. But I think I should stop talking about international lens smuggling.
Funny enough, I was going to buy my 300 2.8 lens from Japan. I was looking at buying one of those Mark 1s. And I think it would have cost me about £2,500, you know, to like get it imported. And in the end, I saw a Mark II version for £3,000 on eBay. So I thought, well, it's only £1,000 more than getting one in UK, or getting one imported would cost me near enough £3,000 anyway. So I might as well get a Mark II instead of having a Mark 1, you know. I think recently someone said something about having difficulty getting repairs done on older lenses because Canon's basically stopped supporting certain lenses after so many years. So if you got like a Mark 1 lens, you'll struggle to get it serviced. Even a Mark 2 might become unserviceable when the RF lenses of equivalent nature come into the market. So that's another thing to be concerned about. If you get a lens, can it be serviced? You know.
Yeah. Well, if one of them ever breaks, I don't know. I've had good luck. I've never broken any Canon equipment.
Well, it's like the EFS lenses. Obviously, they're really cheap, between $100 and $300, like a 55 to 250 or something like that. And the cost, what, £200? If I drop it, smash it into smithereens, it's easily replaceable. And yet, if I buy a 200L 2.8 lens, if I drop that, I'm going to be crying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I try not to drop them. That's so far so good.
Well, I did drop a 70 to 200 2.8 lens once, a Mark 1, onto concrete, and it pretty much survived. That's how well made they are. I've dropped plastic lenses and they shatter, which sort of makes me a bit concerned with this lens, because some of this is made out of composite plastics instead of the 100 to 400 EF lens Mark II, which was all aluminium all the way through. So it makes you think, how durable are these if you drop them? These newer lenses versus the older ones.
Well,
I'm certainly not recommending anyone
a YouTube channel where you do that, and like you'll get thousands of people watching. Like, we smashed this Canon lens, but I don't want to do that. I saw the one where the guy like took his 7D and like threw it downstairs and baked it in an oven and tried to prove how undestructible it was. It was a great video, but it's terrible.
Yeah. I've seen someone try and do tests on like the R5 and R6 and put it in a freezer and see if it still works. Because I think they're trying to simulate what it'd be like if you went to Alaska or the North Pole to see if it would work, you know, if it'd be reliable. And to be honest, it surprised a lot of people in their ability to still function in those weather conditions. But I suspect you'd be looking at getting a 1DX, really, if you were to do that, you know, to be reliable.
Well, yeah, I mean, my dream is to go to Iceland and shoot glaciers and things like that. And I still don't really understand how you do that and keep the lenses from fogging up. Like I'm sure it's doable because people have done it, but I keep asking. I don't know how, because like even when I've shot outdoors and even, you know, just cool weather, like in Hawaii in early morning, right, the lens will just fog up like that, or you know, in San Francisco Bay, you know, pre-dawn, right, I just get condensation all over the lenses and you wipe it off and it's right back on. I have no idea how. I don't know if I have to bring like a portable hair dryer. I tried like those little like warmer packets where you touch it and it gets warm. They don't work.
Sorry about that. I don't know why my phone was ringing. Let me just turn it off. Shouldn't be ringing. Turn it off. Yeah, weather conditions you were talking about. Basically, I think what you need to do is make sure the lens is normalized to the temperature outside, and that just takes a little bit of time, because it's like if you take a lens out of your house and you go out and try and photograph something, it's going to be warmer or colder outside. So a lot of people just leave their lens in the car boot, so it's normalized to the outside temperature. Because there's been a lot of people that have got lenses and gone out taking pictures and thought, why are all my images soft? Is there something wrong with my lens? Is it broken? Oh no, I spent all this money on it. What am I going to do? And all they have to do really is just leave the lens in the boot or outside for a little bit longer, and the temperature.
You like I can imagine you could put it in a plastic Ziploc with a bunch of that desiccant stuff that dries everything.
Yeah.
Leave it in the cold, and then any condensation that is there should get dried up. But I don't know how people. I especially worry, like, what if it got on the inside elements of the lens, right? Because then it's going to leave crud behind.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Before I go to Iceland for my dream vacation, I'll make sure I figure this out. Somebody knows for sure what to do.
I think essentially you just leave the lens somewhere where it will normalize. I think it's very similar to like having pressure in different places. And if you get the pressure to normalize, then you shouldn't really have any issues. I think that's what it is. It's like if you take your lens from a warm room and go outside, exactly the same is going to happen. It's going to fog up because it's trying to normalize to the temperature outside, as well as the condensation as well, because you're going to have a lot less condensation in your house than the outside, obviously, you know, with the weather and rain and wind and all that sort of thing. So I think essentially keep your lens in your boot for a little bit longer than you would before you go out and take pictures, and hopefully that will resolve your problem. I'm just trying to find some questions really to post. But
has anybody asked us anything? It says here, new comments. Only Terrell has been rating us.
Yeah. They've been talking about the R8, where I was criticizing the fact it only gives you 6 frames per second on the first curtain electronic shutters thing. I'm just scrolling through the Facebook group, but everyone seems to just upload pictures. Which can be, I've mentioned it before, it can be a bit frustrating when you just put a picture up and you're not saying where the location is, what lens it is, what were the settings, you know, try and give people a story rather than just put a picture up. You know, it can be a bit, I suppose, a bit boring, that, can't it?
Well, we could always start getting, more picky.
Yeah.
How many members does the group have? Let's see, members.
Nearly 23,000.
Wow, 23,000.
Yeah, I started with probably 100.
Well, you had probably started with you.
Well, obviously, I set it up, didn't I? I didn't even expect that many. But then again, there's some other Facebook groups that have got like 130,000 members. You know.
So how long have you had? How long has this group been around?
I'd say about a year, maybe 2 years, something like that.
Yeah, it's not that long at all.
No. Colin Meanus has said, "How do you know when you should clean your equipment?" I think she might refer to the sensor.
How do you know when you should clean your equipment?
I think when you see dust marks on your images, that's an indication that you need to clean the sensor from dust. There's various retailers that'll do that for a minimal charge for you, you know, unless you want to risk doing it yourself. I'm not to say you can't do it yourself, but there are some people that are a bit unsure that they want to risk that doing that themselves. And I suspect if you go to a retailer and they basically knackered your camera, they'd probably be insured.
Well, you know, I don't think there's as much to worry about as people think. So like B&H and Adorama will sell it. Just a moment. Someone wants to go. So you can buy a sensor cleaning kit, and that you're not really cleaning the sensor. You're cleaning a piece of glass or polycarbonate that covers it. You're not. It's not like the actual silicon that you're touching, right? And so the real danger is you'll leave like streaks or marks. So you clean it again, right? So I think that I don't think it's very unlikely because these are like one-use things. I don't think you'll scratch it. As long as you aren't scratching it, for the most part, what I see is like you get like a little, I don't know, some kind of like grime, something that like sticks to it, and you just have to get it to pop off, and the thing's fine. It doesn't, they don't take like a lot of cleaning in my experience, unless you use it in really dirty conditions, and don't do that. I would say don't remove your lens in a really dirty environment. It's not a good idea anyway.
Yeah, they recommend that. Like if you go to Africa, it's very dusty. The ideal solution really is just to have two camera bodies. Really, have a lens on each camera, and then you're not swapping things. So let's see what Terrell's been saying. You can pre-order it on Canon site. Is that the R50 is on about? Probably the R50 has an EVF. I thought it had no EVF though, because that's
like the little viewfinder size, like small one.
Well, I know I can't remember what the camera was called that came out when a 90D did, but it was a mirrorless version of it, and you had to buy like an attachment EVF that went on top. I think Canon was charging like an extra 200 quid for it. So it depends, really. Things keep changing. They keep, specs keep coming out, and then Canon Rumors gets them wrong. All right, and then other YouTubers talk about it and then realize they've got it wrong as well. I just wish people would get their facts right sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using like, $3,000 or $4,000 camera bodies for a long time. So when someone says, "What do you think of this $600 camera?" Like, I'm probably not a good person to ask. Oh, my only answer is, well, it's Canon, so it's probably really good. And I was at a camera shop and I was trying to help someone with their Nikon, and I just couldn't make any sense of the menus of that thing. It was just they were trying to make it like look really easy and like explaining everything, and I couldn't figure out how it was setting like the ISO manually. It was really difficult on this thing. So I like, you know, like I saw Fuji cameras. They're really nice because they have like a dial with the aperture, another dial with the shutter speed, like a camera should, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of Nikons myself. But I mean, a lot of people like them and everything. But
Yeah, because I was tempted by Sony, if I'm honest with you. The thing that put me off was the complicated menu and the fact that that screen doesn't rotate. It just flips up and down, but it won't flip out, so you can see yourself if you want to do a vlog video. So that's the main reason why I didn't go with Sony in the end anyway. And
yeah, and I was put off that they were putting out a new camera every year. And you know, when Canon introduced F1 in the 1970s, right, they wanted to be serious about professional photography. The community told them, well, we want you to introduce a body that you'll keep for 10 years. 10 years, right? I mean, that's not possible now because of technology, but you know, I think, you know, now it's like if they're introducing a body, then the next year there's a new one. They're not really giving you the software updates and paying attention to the product they sold you. And I definitely don't need a new camera every year. I don't think pros do either, you know, like the really serious pros. So it doesn't impress me. You know, I try to replace my body like every 3 or 4 years. That's kind of the tempo I like. And you know, feeling like the thing you just spent 3,500 or 4,000 on is out of date, and it's not going to give you the best quality anymore. It's not something I like, you know. So and I really like the ergonomics of my Canons. Always they seem to do a really good job of, you know, understanding human hands and thinking like photographers, I think.
Well, don't get me wrong. I was a bit annoyed when the R6 Mark II came out, when I've spent $2,500 buying this R6. You know, I felt they brought the R6 Mark II out too early, really. I think maybe another year later, but now it just seems a bit too early when these cameras have not been out that long, you know.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I don't know who does, except, you know, camera YouTube channels and all that. But
well, don't forget, if you've already bought the R6 and the R6 Mark II comes out, this isn't worth half of what I did pay for it now because the new cameras just come out, you know. And as you probably know, cameras don't really keep their value. Lenses do. You know, you can think about any camera that you bought secondhand on eBay or Amazon or whatever, and you probably got it a lot cheaper than, say, the latest and greatest is. And it just seems really quick for a new camera to come out, you know, after the technology not been out very long.
Let's see if we could. No, this way. Let's see if I can tilt myself here. Yeah, let's see this shot here. Well, it's a little hard to, maybe get some more light on it. You know. But it's a great shot. It doesn't look so good in here, but it's a great shot of San Francisco Bay. It's absolutely fantastic. And I shot it with a 7D, you know, and that's, I don't know, 2 by 3 feet or bigger, right? And it prints beautifully. So that was like the old 18 megapixel sensor and a 30-second exposure, you know. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, faster focusing is really great, and better low light focusing is really great, but any of these cameras can take, you know, absolutely fantastic photos, which is maybe more reason why I don't need these upgrades coming out constantly. I'd much rather they just, you know, give us new software updates and refine it and you know, then come up with, like, you know, something that's got like 10 great new things. It's like so compelling to buy when they finally have it. There's no question, right? Not like 3 new things or 2 new menu features.
Well, it's like that 30-minute record limit that's gone on the R6 Mark II. Why on earth can't they do a firmware update for that to take that off with the original R6?
Yeah, they did on the R5.
So why can't they do that? You know? It's only software, end of the day, you know.
They got rid of the overheat limit. That was the thing that was really messing it up.
Terrell said, I think they are saving money by using the same sensor that the R6 Mark II has instead of making a new one, by repurposing a similar sort of sensor. I think that's what it means. Because I think we were talking about the R50 Rebel replacement. So let's see what he said here. Here is a YouTube from Alaska Photography Wild Alaska. Yeah, he's got a YouTube channel, hasn't he? But there are a lot of YouTubers on YouTube just for the sake of getting sponsorship from Canon. What do you think of the Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary? Looking at getting it before I do a body upgrade. Body upgrade. What are you using? That's the thing.
You said you shot one of those, right? You had one.
Yeah.
And you sold it for the 1 to 500.
Yeah, it's an uncommon issue with the adapted EF Sigma lenses at the moment, because if you're quite close to a subject matter, it has the effect of pulsing. If you're some distance away, it's less so. But if someone's fairly close to you, this is the big criticism with the 150 to 600 contemporary lenses, that they're not 100% compatible with the EF system, even with the adapter. And that's why a lot of people are put off getting the Sigma lenses. As soon as Sigma gets permission to bring out the RF mount lenses, that will change things. People will.
Canon wants that royalty, I think.
Well,
and they should. I would too. It's my business. Yeah, pay me $50 a lens because it's a lens I'm not selling. Why should I let you have a free market, you freeloader? I assume that's why they did it. It makes sense to me.
Well, what allowed Sigma to do EF lenses then? What's the difference?
I assume they just reverse engineered it, and this time Canon's was more careful about designing something with patents that they could protect.
Right, I see.
And then I think what I understand is like the little EF to RF adapter basically passes control signals from the camera, so the camera knows what it's talking to. So they probably said, well, they might have written code for every Canon lens there is, and they didn't write any code for these other lenses, and they don't care to. Why should they? Like, why should I write software so this works with my competitor's lens? Because I think it's just business, right? I would, if I'm Canon, Sigma's my competitor, right? Just like Nikon. So why would I want to help them? So the EF protocol was fairly simple, right? It came out in the 1980s, and this new protocol is probably more sophisticated, and they probably threw a lot of patents around it. And in 20 years, patents will expire, I guess.
Terrell says, I have a T7. It's either a body upgrade or a lens. Thinking lens first.
Oh.
If I'm honest with you, Terrell, that camera ain't gonna be really what you want. You want something like a 7D Mark II, 90D, 80D, something like that. It's got high frame rate. These Rebels are okay for beginners, but when it comes to fast action, the problem is the buffer in them. They're really, really small. I noticed that when I had the D600, I think that was equivalent to a Rebel TI5 or something like that. And I upgraded to the 7D very quickly after getting frustrated with it when I was photographing aircraft. I thought, this is terrible. Starts off at 6 frames per second and then drops to 3 very quickly, which is useless for fast action. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to get something, look at the 7D Mark II or the 90D. I'd probably go for the 90D because it's better video functionality. And then use the 150 to 600 on that, and you'll be fine. As long as you're not going to go on the RF cameras, the Sigma lens is going to be absolutely outstanding. It's extremely sharp. Many people dispute the fact that I said it was actually sharper than the Canon 100-400 Mark II lens. But they are incredibly sharp, the Sigma lenses. I just felt, because they got a bigger element at the front, that they outperformed the Canon zoom lenses, like the 100-400. I've done side-by-side comparisons, many videos, and looked at the difference when you upscaled 400 mils up to the 600 that the Sigma can get to. You just can't beat the price. You're talking what, 700 and something quid for a 150-600 lens versus probably 1300 for a used 100-400. And then obviously the RF lenses are a grand more than that anyway. So yeah, personally, if I were you, Terrell, I would get the 90D, get the Sigma 150-600 contemporary, and you'd be all set for doing wildlife. No problems there. You got any thoughts on that, Marshall?
No, absolutely right. I mean, I think that there's a certain amount you spend that gets you like a big kick up in performance and capability, and then after that, it really tapers. You have to spend like a lot more, and you get a lot less, and that's a lot of that is just the technology, right? And when you start looking at the list of things that this vastly more expensive camera gets you, it's just not there. But from a T7, yeah, there's a lot of room to improve. Yeah. And it's not like one thing, right? It's not the frame rate's the problem. It's like the frame rate and the autofocus system and the number of autofocus points and the number of cross points, right? And like a lot of and the just the controls for the hands, right? So I got a 7D like a long time ago, and just like everything changed in my photography, and it forced me to work harder to be a better photographer. I mean, not because it was a harder camera to use, but it just it made me want to really be a better photographer.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it, and then then I progressed with. But everybody has a budget. I respect that for sure, and I think something like 90D is very underrated because it gets so far in capability, and then all these more expensive ones just get you a little bit.
Well, I went from 7D to the 80D to the 90D. The 90D it basically does everything that the 80D can do, except you get 4K video and you get a bump up in megapixels. I think the 80D was 24 megapixels and it was like 32 on the 90D, which blows away the 7D Mark II.
Yeah.
The 7D Mark II is a good camera, an outstanding camera. For me, the problem was the fact it didn't have a flip-out screen. It sort of bugged me quite a bit that I couldn't do vlogs,
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I got the 80D. And then when the 90D came out, I waited for it to drop in price. And I got it for about £1,200. And I done like waterfall photography, gone to lots of waterfalls and doing lots of nature stuff. And I couldn't fault it. In perfect daylight, you're not going to notice that ISO. The ISO can be a bit annoying sometimes in dark situations, but that's the nature of APS-C anyway. It's not a full frame camera, you got to remember that. But for all other uses and purposes, as long as you've got a decent lens, it's fantastic. It's an outstanding camera.
Millimeters on a 30 megapixel crop sensor. Wow, that's quite a lot of reach for nature photography. On a full frame camera, doing that would cost a fortune.
Yeah,
but I couldn't get that kind of pixel density with my R5.
No,
so I could go buy an 800 millimeter whatever and sell a kidney to get it. It would just be impossible. So that's what I mean. You get so much with the 90D, and it costs you so much more money to improve above that. Like,
yeah, because it's like this R6. You see, I was going to get an R5 at one point, although sell a kidney to buy it basically. But then I thought, when the R7 came out, I thought, should I sell this and get an R5? Because I saved a bit of money up for it. And then I thought, hang on a minute, if I get the R7 coupled with the R6, I've got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So it's sort of better in some respects, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously,
when they told me the low light is better with an R6, I was really upset. Like, that's just not fair.
Don't get me wrong, the R7 ain't going to be super fantastic in other areas, and the shutter is a bit on the noisy side. But then again, if anyone out there is ever concerned about the noise on the R7, just think about the 1DX Mark II. It's not quiet, is it? It's a very loud camera. Even the 7D creates a bit of noise, and it's if I'm honest with you, it's probably on par with the 7D Mark II for noise, the shutter on the R7. But you know, I think we're so blessed to have all these cameras, you know, and you can decide which is better than the other. Obviously, you know, I did criticize the R8 for not having a mechanical shutter, no IBIS, but obviously it's a compromise on price, isn't it? You know,
yeah, you can have this for $1,000.
Personally, I would have been happy to pay $2,000 if it had IBIS and 30 megapixels and a mechanical shutter. Maybe that's asking a bit much for £2,000.
Well, that's called the R6 too, right? That's it.
Well, it's not quite. It's 24 megapixels, isn't it? That.
Oh, I thought they were the same. I thought R8 and R6 were basically the same, except there's no IBIS and no fully mechanical shutter and a couple of other little.
That's basically it, the difference. Yeah. But you know, it all depends on what you prefer, I guess. But in terms of Terrell's options, you know, he's asking another question. Let's see what he says. Lens I have right now is a kit lens, 18 to 55 and 75 to 300 and the 51.8.
Yeah, well, they'll all keep working.
Yeah. I've had those 70 to 300s and 75 to 300s before, and I wasn't impressed with them at all. I hated using them because they were always gave me soft images, really, because in respect to what I consider soft, what other people might consider soft are two different relative terms, because, you know, when I test telephoto lenses out, I'm looking for crisp sharpness, you know, and I'm probably overly critical in what other people might be. However, when I tried the 70 to 300, actually, in the end, I got rid of the 70 to 300 and actually had an old Sigma back in the day, 70 to 300 with one of those macro functions on the front, and it made a right noise like that. But it gave me really sharp images, you know. So personally, you know, if I was looking at those lenses he's got there, I'd get rid of that 75 to 300 and replace it with the 55 to 250 lens.
Or the Sigma that he wants to get.
Yeah, yeah. Well, saying that, the lens he wants to get is about 3 times longer, probably.
Oh, I was gonna. Oh, here. Yeah, I was gonna grab the 70 to 200 for him to see.
Yeah, that's an option. 70 to 200. Could even put a 1.4 extender on that if you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these on the market now, I assume, because everybody's going to RF. But
yeah,
this lens it's quite big and heavy, and I think I paid about $1,700 US for it. So, but what's really super about this is, I mean, for one thing, it's built like a tank, and it's very, very, very sharp, and the focus was fantastic, even on the DSLRs. But the f2.8 means it's very fast and very, you know, good separation, background separation at 200 millimeters. But it's not long. It's not that long, right? So it's like in the portrait range. If you're shooting a concert in the pit, so just kind of like there's the 85, which is a little bit big, but this thing's just, I think, gigantic. And the one you have is even bigger, I think, right?
Yeah, the 300 2.8 is more sharp, but I've got it for its 2.8 aperture, which means if I slap a 1.4 on it, it's 420 at f4, or a 2x. I make sure it's a Mark III EF extender, not the Mark IIs, because the Mark IIs were terrible. They're not very good, but the Mark III is a much, much better extender. And that gets you to 600 at 5.6. So, you know, those are other options as well, extenders. I would probably say 70, well, actually, that lens you've got, the 70 to 200, 2.8 with a 1.4 extender gets you to 280 millimeters. Not far off what he's got there. At f4, which is pretty good in itself. But then again, you probably don't need that if you're going to get the Sigma 150 to 600. But I'm not saying not get the 70 to 200 2.8 because it lets a lot more light in. It really depends, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean the 7200 is not a great wildlife lens. That for sure.
No. But
if I want to shoot wildlife, it's not the one to bring.
I've heard this a lot before. A lot of people say, "Oh, I need to get that 800 lens." It's not true. I remember walking a local park and I had the 300. It's an older lens, obviously. 300 f4, and I was just walking around and I took a picture of a squirrel that came really close to me. In fact, it was too close. So there can be circumstances that you can get close to wildlife. It doesn't necessarily mean you need that massive long lens. And a lot of people forget, and this frustrates me a lot when I see photographers talk about, oh, I've got this 800 f11 lens, oh, I'm getting these fantastic things in my shot, brilliant. And then I look at it and I think it's a bit soft in it. How much atmosphere are you shooting through and what time of the day is it? And it looks a bit hazy to me, you know. Atmosphere is a big issue sometimes, especially in summer. You know, if it's really hot, you'll have to get up early in the morning or wait till it cools off to get a good photograph. Or the other alternative is get closer.
Yeah, hopefully people figure it out. You know, like you go out bird shooting and there's this, oh look, there's a bird way over there, and you take a picture of it and it's like, okay, yeah, it's a picture of a bird in a tree, a lot of trees around it, and there's only you have to be pretty close.
Yeah,
you have to be very quiet and get close to those animals, and then still helps to have a long lens.
A lot of people underestimate the use of camouflage as well. You can get these like mini hides you can pop over your head and be like hidden. Those are quite handy to get as well. You know, a lot of people underestimate that. I don't know if you're familiar with a YouTuber called Brent Hall. He goes around with like ponchos that are camouflaged, you know, and he carries that around with him all the time. And it helps him blend in with his surroundings. And there's various wildlife things you can buy on Amazon, eBay, and that, what have you, and it will help you blend in. A lot of people put camouflage on the lenses as well. You know, various types of camouflage you can put on. They're like wraps you can put on that are removable but very sticky, that leave a load of horrible residue on. Or you can get the neoprene ones that you can put on. I've got a lot of videos on my YouTube channel where I get it from a UK company that supplies them at a relatively cheap price. There are companies, I've noticed this in the States, that make these camouflage things, and they're incredibly expensive. They charge like £80 for a wrap of one particular lens. And let's say you've got, like you, 10 lenses. I've got to have a wrap for each one, 30, 40, 50. A lot of money that when you start adding it all up.
Yeah, I don't think I need to be so fancy.
Yeah. So what's your longest lens then that you've got?
Terrell says, make sure you're about 500 feet from bears. That is, especially if it's the cocaine bear.
Why the cocaine bear? Does it like smoke something?
There's a new movie out called The Cocaine Bear about based on a true story where I guess some drug smugglers ditched their cocaine out of an airplane and a bear ate it. So now I guess there's a movie about a bear who's high on cocaine. So I would stay more than 500 feet away from the bear. Sure.
Yeah, when I say get close, there are certain things you can't get closer to, like lions. You know, that's why they go around in jeeps, and they've thought of reasonably well protected, and normally they've got some sort of guard with a shotgun or something, or a rifle, just in case. The last thing you want to do is have your customers eaten.
Yeah. Well, I think if I see a bear, when I've been in Yosemite and I'd see bears, I just walk away from them. I wouldn't try to get closer for photo. And they're kind of it's a photo anyway. They're just not really interesting. There's bears. Flying birds are another story.
What's your opinion of zoos then?
It's good practice. I mean, I've shot in a zoo, and it's you can get good shots, and it's good practice, but I think it's a little limiting for sure, and yeah, I don't know. I did it once, actually, got good results, and I'm kind of done with that. But it's not the same as like photographing an eagle that's flying down to grab a trout out of a river or something. That's kind of the ultimate, or hummingbird or something.
Well, zoos are quite strange because obviously you're always trying to figure out a way of blurring out whatever's in the background you don't want to be there, like wires and cables and stuff like that, and fences. But I don't know if anyone knows this, but they tend to have terms and conditions. If you look on a zoo's website, it says, if you use animals, professional photography images, you are not permitted to sell them. I don't know if you've ever actually come across that.
No. I wouldn't sell the animals, so.
Well, yeah, but I went to a game reserve. Well, I was going to go to a game reserve until I looked under the terms of their, game reserve site. And it said again, if you can't use images and sell them from a Ferrari, site. And I thought, why?
I wonder if that's enforceable, actually, because, you have different laws in your country, but generally in America, if you take a photo of something, you own it. It's your photo. Like I snuck my gear into a Neil Young concert and shot the whole show, and then at the end, his stage manager took me backstage and made me erase all my photos. So I erased memory card 1, but he didn't actually have any. I erased the empty card right in front of him. But he didn't actually have any legal standing to make me do that.
No one does, unless it's private land. That's the only.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, he could tell me to leave.
Yeah, he can do that.
Leave, but he can't say your photos are now my property. They're not.
No.
But, he can do it. He can call the police, and what are they going to arrest me for? I'm not trespassing. I had a ticket. So there's no illegal activity there. And I like I said, British laws, I don't know, right? It could be all different, but I mean, God knows the paparazzi photograph whatever they want, and they own those photos. So and plus, how I don't know. Maybe they could prove that animal was theirs, by the markings or something. I don't know. Or if you're promoting their zoo or something like that. But generally, it's hard to tell. I don't know. I can't tell one giraffe from another. So.
Yeah. I've been in camo and been within 20 feet of a black bear.
Well, that's much less expensive than buying a 600mm lens.
Oh yeah, the camouflage is certainly not recommended, he says. Zoos are fine practice, and don't try and pass them off as wild shots. Well, you could do if you're creative enough. I don't know if you know this, but if you get a telephoto lens through some fencing, you get it really close. You can actually, because the angle of view on some lenses can be as much as 5 degrees, 6 degrees, 7 degrees, you can actually get through the fence and have none of that fencing shot if you're close enough to the fence. It's only if you're back a little bit, then it's impossible to do.
Close to the fence and far from the animal.
Yeah. it's if you can get close to the fence and the animal isn't near the back, you could create images that could be usable, you know.
Well, I'm going to go to the zoo soon, so we'll see. I mean, not today, but today, where are we going? We're going to a basketball game.
All right. Yeah, I was expecting Dan Schubert to attend today, but he's obviously quite busy, apparently. And we only had Alan on for a couple of minutes because he's, you know, on the beach at the moment. I did say to him, "Why don't you bring a car battery? Then you'll be able to be on for some time." But then again, saying that, Alan has a habit of his battery dying anyway, you know.
Well, it's just about the top of the hour, and I'm going to have to go to this basketball game.
Right, fair enough. I think we'll leave it there. You know, thank you, Marshall, for coming on and having a bit of a chat. Thank you for Terrell for leaving your comments. If I had some, what else has he said? So look. One of the photos I posted today to the Facebook group was shot through the fence, and you can't tell. Well, yeah, it's easily done. So I thought we'd probably leave it there because it's a bit boring me talking on my own. It's a lot, but before you came on, I was talking on my own. And it can be quite boring when you got no one to work off. It's hard to come up with something with a subject matter when I ain't got any notes here to go off. Because it was last minute. Alan says, "Are you doing your live stream today?" And I wasn't going to do it because I just didn't feel up to it. But then I thought, well, since Alan's asked me, I might as well do something, you know, even if it's a couple of hours. And I think you yourself said you were just going to do an hour anyway, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not about how long you're on. It's all about the content that we can talk about and discuss.
Yes, and one of these days, I promise I'll say something intelligent.
Well,
probably.
It's been nice to have you on, Marshall. I do appreciate the time. So I'll call it a day there, and I'll just basically do the intro video and end the stream. Everyone, thank you for coming to watch. Do appreciate it. We had a few more people watching. That's nice to see. 3 people instead of just 1, which was a bit bizarre in the past couple of streams. But maybe people are starting to find these and
we're gonna grow.
Starting to watch them. I don't know if it's growing or not. I just upload it to YouTube, and I think after we've done our stream, people do come on and watch them afterwards as well.
Yeah, you know, maybe next week we can focus on a. Well, I'm going to be away next week, but maybe next time we can focus on a specific subject like autofocus technique or exposure techniques, or you know, something that's more narrow. I don't know if the group would like, you know, the people in a group would like that.
Well, we could do. I was thinking about critiquing some people's images, where we could look at them.
Tear mine to shreds.
It depends how you characterize which is bad and which is good, and are you looking at depth of field, composition, angle of view, you know, stuff like that. It doesn't always necessarily mean you have to say that's a crap image. Or that's a good image, or that's an average image. For me, a good image needs to show a few things like action, something going off that keeps you interested, and gives you a point, you know, something to be interested in. I think that's what makes a good image. What you don't want is what you might just call a selfie, you know, which is just a duck on.
No, I get, you know, I told you when I got my 7D, that's when I started trying to get really serious and trying to push myself to get better. And I think the first thing I tried to figure out was what makes a photograph good.
Yeah.
Like what's objectively, you know, good versus objectively bad, forgetting whatever's subjective in art. And that was well, you know, that's an in-depth study. And it's very hard to take criticism of your images because you like, wow, that sunset looks awesome. He's like, yeah, there's a stick in the foreground.
Yeah, I go to the park quite often and I take pictures of ducks and I look at the image and I think, yeah, it's all right, but there's nothing of interest. You know, it's not like having a golden eagle coming down into the ocean and grabbing a fish and then flying off.
Yeah,
Now, that would be something nice.
yeah.
But I know someone called Christopher Rao, who's a well-known photographer in wildlife. He's got like a 500 f4, all the Canon latest gear. He's actually a chef in the US, and he actually is a really nice person, because what it is he was fighting an addiction to alcohol, right? And because obviously chefs work long hours and they spend lots of money on stuff, and they drink a lot basically to keep themselves awake sometimes, to do the job. And he replaced that with photography, and he goes out early in the morning, takes pictures, and he actually appeared on, I don't like to mention this person because I hate the fact he advertises Squarespace all the time. He appeared on one of Tony Northrup's YouTube channels, videos. Yeah, I know. He keeps trying to sell that book, and I used to sell him. It's not an academic book.
Canon's the worst. New video. Canon's the best. I'm switching to Sony. I'm switching to Canon. I'm switching to Nikon. Make up your mind, dude. Anyway.
Well, it's clickbait, isn't it? Anyway, put that aside. Christopher Rao was actually on there. Believe it or not, Christopher told me they had an argument of some sort. Anyway, it was the first time I got to know about Christopher Rao and his story. And he's been on other YouTube channels as well. Basically, people like his stuff because he basically does these ospreys that come down and grab fish. But the point is, he's filled his life with photography instead of alcohol. And if he ever watches this, good on you. And we all appreciate the work you do. If you ever go onto his channels, his website, sorry, or his Facebook accounts, you'll see lots of these images which are absolutely amazing and fantastic. And keep up the work, Chris, because you're doing a really good job in doing those images and sharing it with the world. But yeah, he spends a lot of time obviously timing his shots correctly to get those fantastic images where you see the bird coming up out of the water with the fish in its talons. And those are absolutely amazing. And you can say those shots are fantastic and perfect. And there's nothing you can criticize. And it's something that all of us are trying to aspire to, because for one thing, he's showing great composition. He's got good depth of field. He's showing action in his shot. There's nothing wrong with those images, and there's another person on our Facebook group. I think she's called Kelly Whitaker, something like that. Takes images of aircraft and wildlife quite a lot using the 500 f4 prime. Again, amazing shots timed perfectly. When you can time your shots of an aircraft, when you see a sonic boom come out the back of it, now that's timing. So anyone out there,
it's one of the
anyone out there who's doing great images, go and see those two people. You'll learn from them. If you can achieve images like they can, you'll be able to, work in the industry, quite easily. We all try and aspire to create images that can be sold. And believe it or not, I sold an image recently. I can't believe it. I sold an image. I took a picture of a rabbit, and someone bought it off that Wirestock site that Jared Pollan recommended that everyone go on. Yeah, I think I sold it for 80 cents. Not a lot of money, but at least I sold something for once.
I'll take it.
So yeah,
10,000 more of them.
Yeah, if I had a lot more, I'd give up my day job. So, anything you'd like to leave us with, Marshall, before you go?
Let's try criticizing our photos next time, or you can criticize my photos. I'd love it.
No, we could critique images. There's actually a lot of images in the recent media on the Facebook group. We could do, a look-see at those and say, do we like them? Do we think they're any good? But then again, some people might get upset if we started criticizing the images as well. It's sort of a fine-edged sword. Some people say, oh, you criticize my image. I think it's fantastic. Well, maybe
some good ones.
Well, maybe we could just pick the best ones and look at those and say what's good about them. Maybe that's another way of doing it. Right, we'll leave it there, and I'll just play the intro to end. I just want to say thank you for coming, Marshall.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right.
I'll go post a photo now. Right. Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you later. Right. Thank you for watching, everyone. Do appreciate it. It's gone on. The stream's lasted for 2 hours, so at least we've got. Before we go, we've got another comment from Terrell. Let me see what I can set up. Maybe I can do next weekend as a beginner. Are you referring to joining the stream, Terrell? I'll be more than happy having you on. Listen, anyone that's watching these videos, if you want to come on and chat, talk about photography, talk about lenses, cameras, situations, the effects of atmosphere on your photographs. Are my photographs any good? Do they need improvement? What's the best way of doing other things? You're more than welcome to come on the live stream. All you have to do is go on Canon Lenses and Cameras Facebook group, send me a personal message, and I will send you the link to these live shows that we do, and you'll be able to just click on it, come onto the stream. All you need is a computer, a webcam, and a microphone, and you can come on and chat, talk about photography, and we can give you the benefit of our advice. Hopefully I can get the panel back on. We've got Dan Schubert. He's one of the moderators. He's got a wealth of knowledge in photography. We've got Alan, who's the storytelling dad, who's building a YouTube channel at some point. He knows a lot about video. There's me that spends a lot of time looking at telephoto lenses, zoom lenses, primes sometimes. And Marshall that knows a little bit of everything. And we can all talk to each other. I'm limited to having 6 people on at a time. So I need to know if you're available to come on. You know, I'll try and schedule a time. What I tend to do is create an event in the Canon Lenses and Cameras Facebook group. Then everyone knows when it's going to happen. I tend to do about 2 a month, mainly because of work commitments. And yes, Terrell, it'd be nice to have you on, certainly, as you've just said, yes. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. Thank you for watching. I'll just play the outro now. Just remember, go onto the Facebook group, as well as subscribe to this YouTube channel. I would appreciate you do that. Like the video. Please like the video. It will help people find this and maybe beneficial. I'm not saying I know everything about photography, but I do have a good wealth of knowledge when it comes to telephoto lenses, wildlife photography, some sports photography sometimes, and the main disadvantages and advantages of the EF and RF cameras as well. And my guests have a wealth of knowledge they can give to you. Doesn't matter if you're amateur or professional, semi-pro, don't matter. You can be a complete novice and want some advice, want to come on stream and have a chat, come on, we'll talk to you. We'll have a nice conversation. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Again, thank you, Terrell, for coming on. Do appreciate that. And I'll just play the outro and then we'll end the stream. And thanks for watching and have a nice weekend. I'm in Forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.